Welcome to No Apology with Emily and Chris. It is going to be a good day because we got a good show planned for you. And I'm thankful that you are here with us, Chris, my husband, my pastor, my all in all here on this earth is with me as well. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. And I love the positioning statement that you and Claire Peterson came up with.
Lay it on us.
I almost said the Chris and Emily show. It's been so long. No Apology with Emily and Chris, bringing light to your world honestly and authentically and without apology.
Yeah, I like that too.
FreshRoadMedia.com.
So you're all smiles. I love to see that. Because yesterday was actually Sunday.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get your feedback on this because I read this when I was on social media. Somebody just made the comment. He was a pastor. And he said that early on in his pastoralship, whatever you want to call it, his sending pastor told him that, you know, with regard to taking time off and getting refreshed and getting renewed, how to do that to make sure that you do that. But then he went on to explain how after you've preached on a Sunday with just the week of preparing and the struggle, and sometimes you're giving hard messages and yada, yada, yada. And then you get up there and you have to deliver this for this extended period of time. And then it's talking to the people. All that emotion, all that energy, all of that can be the equivalent of getting into a car accident. And I'm like, when I read that, it totally made sense, number one. And then number two, when we get home from church, a lot of times you're more quiet than normal, you know? And so usually I'm like, okay, there's something really, really wrong here.
I used all my words.
That doesn't happen very often. But yeah, and so it's just a rhythm that I've seen in our life unfold. And I'm wondering, is it almost like getting in a car accident every week?
It's different.
I mean, just the physical.
Look. There's something terrifying about doing stand-up comedy. Mm-hmm. Okay, once you've done it for a while and you have what I call seat time, you've had enough stage time. You've been on, I don't know whether it's 10 shows, 15 shows, whatever it is. It's more than just 2 or 3.
Right.
Okay, once you get there, then it's different. Then your nervousness is different. And performing in that environment is some of the most fulfilling flesh nature things you can do as a performer. I mean, come on, walking on stage in front of 1,000 people and having them laugh for 30 minutes at everything you say, it's intoxicating. It's also fatiguing. Being a conference speaker or even doing TV commercials, when you're talent and you're in front and the light's on you and people are expecting you to do something, there's effort and stuff that happens. There is nothing like preaching the gospel. It's its own animal. Mm-hmm. Now, we have a sanctuary at our church. It's almost set up like a comedy club. We have little tables for everybody to have their donuts and where they can take notes. And to me, it's probably the most special place I've ever preached in. I've only been here 13 months, and already it's like this is number one. It's my very favorite place of anywhere I've ever spoken. And we're building a new stage because we got a whole new addition on it. It's going to just be awesome. But I can get up there and I can share information from that pulpit, and the room is set up for a conference or for a school board or whatever. Mm-hmm. And speaking from that platform behind that pulpit, no big deal. But when you're there on a Sunday morning and it's a worship service and you're the one bringing the word, there's something about it that it is twice as heavy, mm-hmm. twice as rewarding, and twice as fatiguing. So you go home and you're just
wiped.
Spent.
You're just wiped.
I was an interim pastor for 6 weeks for a very large church in Phoenix, and they had 3 services. The sanctuary sat 1,500 people.
I remember that.
And the 8 o'clock, the 9:30, and the 11. And the problem that I started having then, and I knew that I was in trouble, because I used to preach without notes. I used to only have an envelope with bullet points. Now I manuscript because my mind goes. So I'll go to tell a story. Like yesterday, I used the Field of Dreams movie with Kevin Costner as my example. When I'm telling that story in the 11 o'clock service, I can't remember whether I just said it like 2 seconds ago or that feeling of saying it 2 seconds ago actually was 9:30 or 8.
Because you said it twice already, and it's like, where did I say that?
Where did I say that? So now your mind is playing tricks with you while you're up in front of everybody. And here's the other thing: if you don't like my comedy, if you don't like, me doing, whatever, preaching on American history, or no, teaching on American history, not preaching, and that's one thing. But if God doesn't like my preaching, that's a whole nother animal. That's a lot bigger matzo ball hanging out there spiritually. If you understand what you're doing, so it's fatiguing.
Much more at stake. So all right. So here's my question then, because can you do it again? Because I want to go to. I want to go to our little apologetic moment, and I just want to make sure you're ready, you're fresh.
Oh yeah,
let's go. All right, turning to our apologetic moment, Chris Danielson. What
are we going to call it? Like Bible idiots?
I don't know.
Oh.
I was just winging it.
Well, my teaching platform on freshroadmedia.com is Bible Idiots.
That's
so
what
the
I was
sermon.
just gonna say.
Oh, okay.
I was just gonna do the big game show, not game show, but
I tell you what. Let me bring you up full camera. All right, and from the top.
Yes.
Let's bring people behind the curtain. In 3, 2, let her rip.
And now for our apologetic moment, Pastor Chris Danielson from Bible Idiots. It is the teaching platform for Fresh Road Media. He joins us for his deep dive into apologetics for the day. Need some work. Need some work.
Let me try that again.
Yeah.
I don't know. I look tired. That's
Let's
for sure.
talk about though your message from yesterday was, I gotta say, it was kind of intense. It was really intense.
Was it?
Yeah, and it's up on freshroadmedia.com right now. But Chris, you made a really great illustration because you preach in Iowa. And I loved how you brought in that movie, even though it's not a Christian movie by any stretch of the imagination. You brought in the Field of Dreams, because we were talking before with Don Keith. If you just tell a good story, chances are there's some spiritual aspects there. Mm-hmm. And there were some spiritual aspects that you tied into your message yesterday.
Well, the whole point is, who are you listening to?
Right.
And part of what my teaching platform is always going to be about is your inputs affect your outputs. If you want to just sit and listen to heavy metal music, and you want to just sit and watch horror movies, and you want to, just continue to consume all of these things, your output as a human will be affected.
Yeah.
As a Christian, if you have a bunch of those worldly inputs without, Chris, are you saying that if I watch a scary movie no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way you consume everything. The way we consume everything determines how we have outputs, and it comes down to who are you listening to. Now, Garry Koon is going to be our special guest coming up. He is I consider him a marriage expert, because he has been working in the marriage field for so long, and the success of couples who have torn up their divorce papers after hanging out with him for a while, it's unbelievable. I can't wait for the audience to meet him. But with him coming up, I started thinking about who are we listening to in our marriage, and the bottom line is we went off the rails somewhere in the last 20, 30, 40 years with marriage, and I know it's always been a problem, but it's not anymore what I can be for this person. What can this person do for me? And and Emily, if you don't, if you have another week like last week, we might have to cut you loose. You get what I'm saying? It's like, who lives that way?
Right.
Well, people who have put themselves on the throne of God live that way. And so I always think of, instead of what I can get out of it, what can I give to it? Mm-hmm. And then what I get out of it just seems to kind of rebound. I think of that old Alzheimer lady. She's in the nursing home. And the husband comes, they've been married for over 50 years, and he comes every day, every day. And she has no idea who he is. Sometimes she even tells him off. And he just smiles. And he knows that she's not in her right mind. She's not in her right state. And he's not doing anything wrong. And so the hospital staff came to him and they said, why do you keep coming every day? She doesn't even know who you are. And Emily, you know his response. His response is, yeah, but I know who she is, and I know who she always will be, even though this shell is going to take her to her heavenly home, and I'm going to be here with her for this shell, even if she tells me off every day, because I know who she is. Yeah. And it's kind of like that. Who are you listening to? That's kind of the point of it. And so your inputs affect your outputs. Okay. And so God has given us an incredible gift, which America, and I say America, the world, because Europe kind of led the way in this, they want to get rid of it. And that's called the Bible. And the Bible, the scriptures are our final authority for our life here on earth. And when you put it into context, it makes so much sense. If you take it out of context, people like me, we're morons to folks. That's what it is.
Yeah. You guys mind if I jump in?
Yeah.
Mike wants in?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mike
is that
wants
okay?
in. Yeah.
All right. Jump on in.
All right. Now,
I'll pot your mic up too.
turn on my mic.
Mike,
Yeah.
you're supposed to wait in the green room till you're called.
I know, but I couldn't.
I got to be honest, your segment's probably 30 minutes away.
Okay.
But go ahead. You're here.
No. What are your thoughts, Mike?
Well,
Yeah, seriously.
So about yesterday's sermon, and to me, this is a beautiful example of how the Holy Spirit works. When you have someone like Chris who's prepared a message, he's working in partnership with God, and the Holy Spirit's with him during the process of preparing and delivering. And then those of us that are in the audience, that the Holy Spirit works on our hearts, and we get the message that he has for us.
Yeah.
And yesterday's message for me was just a giant confirmation of why I came to Iowa. Because when you talked about the Field of Dreams, and you talked about, and you know the characters in the movie a lot better than I do. But
Well, I want to hear the message now.
yeah, I know. Go to freshroadmedia.com and
Look on Bible
You can
Idiots,
do
and that's the
that.
latest
Idiots,
one.
the latest one is
It's
posted.
called, I titled it, Thanks for Listening.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Yep.
So while I was listening, you were talking about the character who, something about selling the farm, but then he was urging him not to sell the farm because he could finally see the players that had come back from the past to play, and he's like, there's no way you can sell the farm now because I can see the players. And you talked about us with a discernment when we're walking with God, when we're careful about the voices that we're listening to, when we're trusting only the one true voice, we can see the players in this analogy.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's exactly why I'm here. I
Yeah.
can see the players.
Yeah.
And we have the same spirit. We are on the same page. We have the same goal. And I'm just so glad God brought me here. I get fired up about it again.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so much so you'll just bust right in. And
Hey, I
interrupt
gotta
the
tell you,
show.
I just gotta tell you.
Yeah, studio producer, you
No.
can do that anytime you
And
want.
I
don't
love
care.
that because speaking of the Holy Spirit, that's kind of where I was trying to. That's where I was trying to go with you as well, Chris. Was just what a great illustration that movie Field of Dreams is, where when the main character saw the players, it changed everything, and all of a sudden he's doing things that the people around him are going, "This doesn't make sense. You're nuts." And his brother was telling him, "Dude, brother-in-law, you got to sell this farm. You got to sell the farm." But then later on, when the brother-in-law saw it too, then he's like, you can't sell that farm. And so the Holy Spirit brings us all onto that same page. And I absolutely love that. But Chris, people ask me a lot, do you help Chris with his sermon? Does he tell you what he's going to preach on? And generally speaking, no. I mean, you'll tell me like what scripture you're going to be preaching on, but we don't talk about what you're going to be saying from that pulpit. That's
I will come to you. I will come to you and I'll ask you, like, should I use the term judgmental onlookers or sinners and losers?
Yeah.
And you will help me. You will help me with
I help you not get fired. No. That's true.
I joke.
You'll ask for little grammatical things, but I still don't really even know.
I gave up on trying to be the polished orator about a decade ago. One of the most freeing things I've ever did. And it was longer than that now.
Yeah.
Why is it that when I think back to 2003, 2004, I say a decade ago? That was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Time
2
flies.
decades. Crazy.
Time flies.
Thanks
crazy.
for letting me jump in, you guys.
All right.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
get back to whatever it is I do when you guys are doing your own
All right.
there. All right.
Hey, jump in anytime.
Oh, really?
Anytime. Why not?
Be careful what you ask for.
All right, Mike's going to bail. I'm going to finish my teaching, and then we've got Garry Koon hanging out with us. But first, before we do that, Emily, I want to talk a little bit about your microphone.
Okay.
Okay, you need to push it up just a little bit more if you want what you called the Claire look. She's like, Claire had her microphone like that. I want it like that. Now here's why I won't do that to my microphone.
Why won't you do that?
Because
to your
when you do
microphone?
that, you look like a gerbil.
Well, you do.
Here.
Claire did not look like a gerbil. I don't look like a gerbil. Did you just wreck your microphone?
I just busted my microphone.
This is what Mike does in the background while we're having fun.
All right, let's get back to my teaching. I just want to finish it up here.
Yeah, let's do. All right.
In John chapter 10, it talks about having life more abundantly. Okay? What is a more abundant life? Okay? The first thing people are going to say, more money, more property, more cars.
The things the world
more
says.
Guns,
yeah.
More this. For women, more shoes. You know, for men, more shoes. I mean, I went through my closet the other day and I was just sad. I reflected back to the time when I only had 3 pair of shoes and I was a happy man.
I remember going to a marriage conference, and that was a question that all the women got asked. And Chris, you and I had just moved. How many pairs of shoes do you have in your closet right now? And the women were like, 32, 28. One person had like 55.
The
and
husband
I'm
and wife had to match numbers.
We had just moved, so I had purged.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have like 8.
No, the answer was 19.
Oh, okay.
I said 19, you said 18, and it turned out that we were only 1 shoe away, so we won. We won. And I knew that you had 18 or 19 because I boxed them like right before we.
Yeah. Well, the point
like
was
2 months before we did that marriage conference.
I had hardly any shoes compared to other women. I'm like, I feel really dumb. I felt really bad writing that number down at first, but anyway.
19 being low?
I thought that's a lot of shoes. How ridiculous is that? Till I heard everybody else's answer.
No, 19 for a woman in America is kind of low.
Is it? Anyway.
Guys normally have 3 pair.
I think we're sidetracked though.
And I have like 12 or 13 pair now because they don't wear out and my feet aren't getting bigger. So I just collected them.
That's true.
And anyway.
Okay, so what was your point?
I don't even know. I had it. Oh, John 10, life more abundantly.
It's not shoes, I'll tell you that.
In the world, in the live life more abundantly, there's one key. There's one key to all of it, okay? Yeah. And that is, Jesus says this. He says, my sheep hear my voice. What if you're not hearing the voice of Jesus? Are you, in fact, his sheep? Here's the thing. We go through valleys. We go through dry spots. We go through times when it just ain't clicking like it used to. No 2 things ever happen the same way. No 2 days are ever alike. Everything, have you ever gone to that restaurant and had that beautiful meal and that great time? Emily and I have, and you know what? We go back to recreate it, and it's never the same.
Right.
I'm not saying it's worse, because sometimes we've actually found it to be better or this, a different kind of great. But most of the time, it's a step back.
Yeah.
You go to recreate that mountaintop experience at that favorite restaurant, and it just turns out to be an average day. So in that world, life more abundantly, it comes down to, do you hear your shepherd? And if you don't, then I encourage you to desperately, desperately, desperately get back into God's word and let him speak to you through his word first, and then open your spirit to him. Ask him, is there anything... a lot of times people aren't hearing from God, and you talk to them and you find out they are going to God, telling God, you have to meet me on my terms. And God doesn't roll that way. I mean, would you do that with your dog? Would you do that with your child? Would you do that with anything that you are the master of or in charge of? No, you wouldn't. So God's not going to do that either.
Right.
So that's the gist of it. But I want to get into marriage with Garry Koon, and of course, right on with way off with Mike Shaw coming up around the corner.
Yeah.
And so that's all I have to say on that.
I love that. Field of Dreams. Watch again if you haven't seen it in a while, and just relate that to your spiritual walk. When you have finally been given eyes to see and ears to hear from the God of the universe, it can change the way you perceive all other things. So stay with us. You're listening to No Apology with Emily and Chris on Fresh Road Media. Right now, our good friend Garry Koon is in the green room. We're going to be bringing him up on the guest cam.
There he is.
So glad to have you with us. Welcome to the show, Garry.
Good morning, Em and Chris. It's good to see you again.
Oh, well, you are our marriage expert. For those of you who don't know, Garry Koon was in ministry as a pastor for over 40 years. He is the founder and the curriculum designer of a ministry called Design to Thrive, which is a marriage ministry with incredible success rate. I've been on that board since its inception. And he's also the partner, as we just explained to you at the beginning of the show, who is going to go again with me to Israel. We are kind of co-hosting buddies when we take folks to Israel. So we've done a lot of stuff together, Gary, and this is your first time, I think. Did you ever come on the Chris and Emily show as a guest devotionator or anything in the past? I mean,
No,
you did.
you told me I wasn't important enough then, but things have changed, so we're good now.
Hey,
he's an influencer now.
There is a project. There is a project that we did with Al Robertson that is still sitting there, and we did it in 2017, 18, called 6 Weeks with the Bible Idiots, where we put a panel discussion together, and we actually filmed it at Gary's church. And Gary, you're in that panel discussion, so this is not the first time we've actually worked together in media.
Oh, not at all, Chris. And we've worked together not only in Israel, but when you and Em were at our church, we did some projects there. So yeah, we've been together on a lot of things that the Lord's allowed us to do together. So
yeah.
Well, I'm excited for you to come on the show. I want you to be a regular guest on Emily's show, and Emily wants that too, because what we want to be about in our ministry, part of what we want to do in our ministry, is we want to be part of the solution for marriages that are struggling. And not only that, but we also want to be an encouragement to marriages that are going good so that they continue to go good. And the Bible gives us so much. Tell us a little bit about when you got involved in ministry on the marriage side, very intentionally, to the point where that became your second career after God let you leave the pulpit after 40 years.
That was a long question.
I know.
In other words, why marriage ministry?
Yeah, why
Gary?
marriage ministry? And what happened to make you go that way during your 40 years of successful pulpit ministry?
There you go.
you know, it's interesting. It's interesting. You said God let me leave. I think He kind of pushed me. It was time to leave. But at Georgetown Bible Church in 2006, I began to really have a heart for marriages, and not marriages that were in crisis, though I would help those. We recognized that about 80% of Christian marriages were just existing. They weren't thriving. They were getting along. They were doing their job, but there just wasn't what God intended it to be. So at that time, I talked to a friend of mine who had recently gone through a divorce, and Jeff and Rosanna Dornbos, and I said, listen, we need to do something to help marriages before they get to the crisis, to prevent that crisis, to give them tools, to strengthen them so that they can be not only strong marriages as an individual, but in their church and in their community. So that's where things began, Chris, back in 2006.
Yeah. You know, we've heard a lot about like how marriage, family, it's the backbone of culture, you know, that family unit. It is important for it to be not just existing, but thriving as well. Talk to us like from that biblical worldview. How does that work? Why is that important? Why is marriage so very important in God's economy?
Well, all I can tell you is it's the very first thing that He established after creation. Marriage has been a priority and always will be a priority between one man and one woman. And that marriage covenant, that relationship began when God realized, hey, I did everything great, but man's alone. And created woman and said, now be fruitful and multiply. The two shall become one. They did. And marriage was established, by the way, I don't want to sound like a heretic, way before the church. Way before the church was born. So God has had a priority on that relationship. And when marriages in the church are not strong, when they're struggling just to exist, it affects everybody in the church. I used to say to our church board, listen, guys, our church is only as strong as our weakest marriage.
Interesting.
That's a powerful statement, actually.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. That's really good. I'm going to carry that with me. So,
it's just like your church board's only as strong as the walk of your weakest member.
Yeah.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same concept.
Exactly. So what are some things, because I have to agree with you.
That's a shock.
That's I have to agree with you.
We've been really following Emily, how she agrees with everybody but me.
That just proves her wisdom. That's all I can say.
From me, Chris.
Wisdom.
It's a joke,
No,
but anyway.
I agree with you in that there are so many couples that they're just kind of going through the motions now. That's not an uncommon thing anymore. What would you contribute? What are some main things? Because I'm sure there's a lot of things, but what are some main things that kind of contribute to those marriages that the passion goes out and we're just kind of going through the motions now?
Yeah.
Well, you know, Emma, I've had the privilege of spending almost 4,000 hours of marital or premarital counseling with couples, and I observed during that time that most of them were not taking any active strides for things spiritually together. They were doing their devotions individually, and they were proud of that, but they weren't spending time. We find even in our marriage retreats, hundreds of couples that they'll come in strong in their personal relationship, but haven't prayed together in months, if not years.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge thing.
What does that do for a couple when they start, getting into those intimate areas of their lives together rather than separately? What does that do for that marriage couple?
It creates an intimacy that goes way beyond physical or sexual intimacy. It's very emotional for me when I watch couples who, by the way, in our retreats, 2 months after their retreat together with them, we have a follow-up session. They come back, if the goals they set on retreat, we meet with them 2 months later, buy them dinner, and we say, hey, how you doing on those commitments you made? And I cannot tell you the number of couples with tears in their eyes and said, we took your advice. We are now praying together. We're doing devotions. We never did them together. We're doing them twice a week. And it's made a huge change in how we communicate with each other and even how we communicate with God individually.
That's
one of the things that I've always felt like was a success for my family is that we had one little thing. I know a lot of other families have it, and I know some families have just said it ain't no big deal, but to me it's everything. In fact, even yesterday, we made a quasi rule on the fly for this, and it's called eating together, breaking bread together. As a family, every night at the dinner table is why my family and our kids and we are who we are. Without that experience, just over and over and over and over again for decades, you don't get that tie that binds. And now Emily was on a different diet yesterday, and so I had to, I chose to cook my own little thing. But when it was time for me to eat, excuse me, she sat with me while I ate. Even though she didn't sit at the table, she sat near me and we talked. It's almost like, I don't want to just sit and eat this meal by myself if you're anywhere near. I need you to be in the same room with me and dine with me. How much of breaking bread in general terms leads to successful marriages and successful families from your perspective?
Breaking bread, having meals together, and it gets even more difficult when you have children, and especially when those children get older and they've got softball practice or volleyball practice or band practice or whatever. It gets very difficult. You're blessed that you did that. Even growing up, it was difficult for me as a pastor to get that time together. But I think it's very important. I think that's one of many habits that Christian marriages need to develop, and most Christian marriages don't do that. Yeah. And I'm not just talking about the rote time. Some people will do devotions on every meal, and that's great. But sometimes even that becomes just mundane. You got to be creative, and we need to be creative as believers. God gave us imaginations. They gave us a great mind, and I believe God's got a great sense of humor. And those things need to be a part of a marriage as well. But eating together, even if I don't care if it's fast food. We've got to the place, instead of driving through, we're going to go in. We're going to sit down together.
Yeah.
Even if it's just fast food, we can still sit together.
On plastic furniture?
On plastic furniture.
You expect me, Chris, to go in there and sit on plastic furniture when we could just go through the drive-thru?
Yeah. No, I think there's something about face-to-face. And when I say face-to-face, I mean literally, physically face-to-face. And not
we
with
say that on technology.
No, but we can sit at a table and both be on our phones, and it doesn't matter that you're sitting at the same table. Just looking your spouse in the eye, that eye-to-eye contact, that face-to-face dialogue, there's something very relevant there, isn't there?
There certainly is. And people who are not spending time together spiritually probably aren't spending good quality time together just in life. And you can't do life and you can't face life. The world is evil. The world hates marriage. We know that from everything we see in the news. And I got to tell you, I'll say this and probably be in trouble, but most churches don't do a real good job of making marriage a priority.
Yeah. I'd have to agree with that. So let me talk to you.
But there are some that do. because we've
Oh
gone
no,
to
no,
churches
there's some
and done
do a
marriage
great
events,
job.
Absolutely.
yeah.
He didn't say
Yeah, no,
all.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
But it is a weakness of the visible church, of even the sold out church, even the good
Yeah.
ground church. Sometimes marriages fall down, and the exception to the rule is part of the problem. I'll get into that in a minute. But you had another question. Go ahead.
Gary, you made a really good point about the world, and the world just impacts marriages whether you like it or not. But I think that the world is sending so many contradictory messages. It contradicts the Bible. So what are some of those misconceptions that the modern married couple may have about marriage, that the world's telling them it should be this way, but wait a minute, back up. The Bible says it should be a different way. What are some of those misconceptions?
You really think we have time for all those? I'll give you a few, but that would be
one or
we need a whole
two.
show for that.
Your
Yeah.
audio,
We got time.
Number
Gary.
one.
your audio's still good. The video's lagging a little bit, but we're going to go ahead. But take as much time as you want, Gary. Try to answer that monster of a question.
Yeah. Well, first of all, just in advertisement. Advertisement. The key word I heard last night, I counted it as we were watching the ball game, and I watched the commercials, and 11 times in an hour, it talked about what I deserved. You deserve this. Well, I don't
Interesting.
deserve anything.
Yeah.
And we've given that mentality. Well, you deserve to be happy. It's not a scriptural concept at all, but we've bought into it. You deserve to have these things. Scripture never teaches us that things are important.
Right.
And yet the mentality has done that. And then that's taken into the marriage. And there's a husband will say, well, I deserve to be happy. You need to do these things because I deserve that. No. They've lost a complete sense of servanthood. Marriage is based on servanthood, and that biblical concept, that biblical worldview is absolutely essential. So everything around us, even what we would consider, quote, innocent advertising. There's no advertising that's innocent. Zero.
Yeah.
There's not
Yeah.
a single thing that's put on that's just not true.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Garry Koon is our special guest today. He is the creator, founder, designer of Design to Thrive. Maybe not designer, but that's kind of God's concept. He wrote the curriculum that helps marriages. I want to talk a little bit about his approach to marriage versus our approach to marriage. They're completely different as far as marriage ministry, but they're not in competition with each other. We do what is like a mech event, like a mech drive-through event. We do like date nights, and we do a conference that's like 2 days. But what Gary does is he takes 3 couples and 2 mentor couples that do all the serving all weekend long, take them to a high-end resort and have a weekend together. It's called Design to Thrive Weekend Events. And here's the thing, when you started this ministry, I was blessed to be one of your first board members, but this costs couples nothing. And yet there's always funding available. It's like God's hands involved in this. Let's talk a little bit about Design to Thrive ministry. I mean, this is not a commercial for Design to Thrive. It's just such a cool concept. I want people to know about it so they can apply it to other areas of their life. But you started out with this idea, and you started doing these retreats while you were still a pastor. And tell us about why your stuff is successful, why your approach is successful, because it's not the same approach we have, and yet we can, say, well, Gary's is better than yours, or no, that's not how it works. It's that yours is just what it is, and it's a great thing. So why did you come up with this weekend concept? How did it all come together?
Well, we've attended a lot of marriage conferences, and they've been good. I'm not being critical. Family Life has a great conference, a weekend to remember. What we looked at, however, was there's 300, 400, 500 couples there, and very difficult to be intimate. And there's so much information, good information, that it's like trying to drink out of a fire hose. And I said to my friend, I think that we need to look at 3 or 4 couples at a time. Design a weekend for them that begins on Friday night at 6, that ends Sunday at about noon. And we need to have 4 major subjects, and we can look at those if you want, that we address. But in that time, we even design it for Saturday afternoon after lunch from 12:30 to 5:30. You're free as a couple. We want you to spend time, just the two of you. Part of the rule is that you can't even hang out with the other couples there. We just want you to find each other again. We want you to come to this place and be renewed and restored and rejuvenated in your love for each other. So it's unique in the fact that it's smaller. One of the biggest excuses I used to hear from men, well, we just can't afford it. And there's some truth to that. If you're going to go to one of the bigger conferences, it's going to cost you $1,200 to $1,500. By the time you get a hotel, you pay for the conference costs, you get the resources, you buy your meals. We do ours absolutely free. And as you said, Chris, the venues we have are top notch. The food is excellent. The resources that they get are free. They walk out of there with, if they want audio books, they want iPads, they want books in their hands. I'm old school. I love to have a book in my hand.
Yeah.
But we offer all of that to them. They can walk away with 12 to 14 books, 3 or 4 on each of the subjects, and it's absolutely no cost.
And the reason it's no cost is that people have made it that way, and marriages that have been healed over the years are the ones who continue to fund this. Is that accurate?
Matter of fact, we've had 2 couples that came with divorce papers. They ripped them up while they were there. A couple of them now are facilitators, teaching leaders, because Gary didn't do that. Doris didn't do that. God did that.
Yeah, that is so awesome.
Changed their life. And about 40% of our givers are people that have gone on retreat. Afterwards have said, man, this helped us. How can we help? And then they come on board on a monthly basis to help us. An average retreat costs about,
No, go ahead. Average retreat costs what?
An average retreat will cost about $3,600 for the weekend.
Okay.
So with 4 couples. So
okay.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, let's talk about it some more. Here's the situation. Garry Koon's video is lagging really bad. You audio listeners have no idea. His audio is clear, so we kept going. We're going to take a break real quick and try to reset that. Come back. I want Gary to explain these 4 things that are going on. And so let's just take a quick break. You're listening to No Apology with Emily and Chris. Special guest Garry Koon from Design to Thrive. It's designed number 2 thrive.net. That's the website. And we'll get all that around the corner. You're listening to No Apology on freshroadmedia.com. Welcome back to No Apology with Emily and Chris. We are your home to bring light to the world honestly and authentically and without apology. And Garry Koon is our special guest. He is the curator, author, constructor, I don't even know, my mind's going out. Founder, writer of the curriculum for Design to Thrive Marriage Ministry. And his video is still lagging a little bit, but we have a solution in post-production, so we're just going to keep going. Emily, it's just exciting. Gary's such a good friend, and it's the ministry that we do for the King that gets us so excited. That's the tie that binds us together. Yeah. And so it's just exciting to have him back on the show. Yeah,
Gary, you were talking about those like 4 areas or elements or whatever they were that you like to focus on at these retreats. Tell us about those 4 areas.
Well, number 1 is communication. We spend probably a session and a half on that because people just don't know how to communicate. Communication is more than talking. It's certainly just as important to listen. We try to develop those skills, guys. We try to give them, and public schools have lost any of that. The face-to-face thing. I've watched couples that have communicated with their phones. By the way, when they get retreat, they have to turn their phones into me. We spend the time with them. We make them spend the time face-to-face. But we have done a miserable job, and still do, of really communicating with one another on more than a surface level. So we spend a lot of time on that. Then we spend some time on finance. Again, 98% of marriages, communication, finance, and sex are the big 3 why they split up. But we talk about money. We offer them not just developing a current budget, which most of them don't have. We have them take a look at the future. We're using a little insurance thing that's called the elephant in the room. And for women to have security, they need to know where things are. For all my life, I'd say, hey, Doris, don't worry about it. It's all up here in my head. She said, yeah, and if you die, where would it be? So we help them walk through planning exactly everything. You know, I did a funeral when I was first in ministry for a guy that was my age, 28 years old. 3 kids. had no life insurance, nothing. So the grief was even worse for that woman. I went home and I said, babe, we're buying life insurance today. At least enough to cover things. We talk about that. I don't sell it, but I want them to understand for a woman to be secure, she's got to know those financial things. So we talk about money, current budget, what goes on, how you spend it. We talk about giving to the church. I don't want their money. I'm not a pastor anymore, but I want them to understand the philosophy of it's all God's. If they don't get that, they're never going to get it financially. So we walk through that. The third one is emotional and physical intimacy. We talk about how both of those tie together. Again, I haven't done a retreat where sex hasn't been an issue for at least two of the couples. One, the guy wants more than he's getting. The girl isn't interested for whatever reason, and probably most of that's a guy's fault. I use this illustration. You'll get a kick out of this. I always say, listen, guys, Doris and I used to fight about sex all the time. And they said, well, what do you do about it? I said, well, I couldn't get enough sex. She couldn't get enough money. I just pay her for it now. So now we're both happy. And everybody laughs, but they get the point.
Yeah.
They get the point. Yeah. She says, you see two new pairs of shoes, and Gary was lucky this week. But we talk about the differences. Well, I hope this doesn't offend your audience. I don't care. But anyway,
look, if they haven't been offended by now, just give them time. I'm still on the show, so I'm a very offensive and off-putting person, I've been told. So anyway,
but we talk about you talk about the spiritual end. Nothing more important in that physical relationship if the spiritual isn't good. When that relationship is right, oh my goodness, it's unbelievable. And God intended that to be a part of the whole for us. So when we talk about physical, the sexual part, we talk about the emotional part and how important that is, usually to the woman, not always, but how important that is for that to be healthy and whole. And we get some good questions. We have times where we break into sessions just the men and just the women, and usually after that session we have a lot of conversations because they were a little shy. And then the last one, of course, is the spiritual connection. We do that Sunday morning, and we wrap all of that up together and helping them understand that without that, their relationship will never be what it has to be. I never understood love until when my mom used to tell me growing up, hey, Gary, I love you. Yeah, Mom, I need $10. I got a date. Hey, Gary, I love you. I need the keys to the car. When my first child was born, I sat in that delivery room and hit myself in the head and said, man, she loved me this much. I didn't understand that love until that happened. You can't understand the depth of love for your spouse until you understand the depth of love of God for you.
Right. I love that.
Key.
I absolutely love that. Now, as we're going through these things, Gary, because you've mentioned before, you don't have to be in crisis in order to take advantage of this Design to Thrive weekend, because no matter where you are in your relationship, there's always room for improvement. We've always kind of got some blind spots in our visuals. So you actually have people come who, our marriage, it's great, but we go to the Design to Thrive and it's like, oh, here we can improve. Here we can get closer. Yeah. Here we can do better.
We ask them at the very beginning, we ask them to rate their marriage, to write down a piece of paper where they are. And most of them will go between a 5 and a 7. And they'll say, it's okay. And I said, you want to settle for okay? When the God of the universe gave you something that can be unbelievably great, and you want to settle for okay. Not this weekend. I'm not going to do that this weekend. And I always tell them, listen, God brought you here. He has something for you. And once you find it, don't leave it here, take it home. So, we'll take marriages in crisis. Sometimes they get there and they didn't realize how much in crisis they were. And sometimes they come just thinking, I'll go because I have to. And at the end, it's usually the men. We're watching them walk up. We help them bring their luggage in and their shoulders are down. At the end of the weekend, they're saying to me, I wish we'd have done this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's the men's response.
Yeah, that's
awesome. And the girls are nagging and saying, "I told you 10 years ago." No, but but that's usually what happens.
Yeah.
Well, people have always come to us and they've said, "How can you put your marriage out in front of thousands of people every day for 3 hours a day?" And I'm like, it's easy. It actually helps. I mean, we have to get along publicly. I can't tell you. I mean, I've told people, I've said, Emily has quit in the middle of the show 3 times and over 17 years. I had to do a 3-song sweep in Arizona and go in the back on the steps and get a crying woman and bring her back onto the air because her name's on the show. And she's out there because she's mad at me, who happens to be your spouse. And I said something on the air that really torqued her off, or I did something wrong. Anyway, it's not all
really.
rainbows.
I can't believe that.
I know. I know.
Wow.
The point is that when we would encourage marriages, it was literally like a drive-through meal, where what you guys do is you sit them down for a feast that is served with 7 courses and white tablecloths. That doesn't make our marriage event bad. It is
Not
what
at all.
it is.
Not at all.
Spend $15. Come to a Friday night. We'll do a little comedy. We'll share a little teaching with you as a refresher, like a date night. We have not done those actively for, I want to say 5 years, but I bet it's getting closer to 10 now. Look at how gray I'm getting. Man, time is flying. Anywho.
You're getting distinguished, dear.
That's one way to look at it.
Wow. I should get my boots on. I didn't know this interview
I know. So here's the point. I know when our marriage is at 11 on a 1 to 10 scale, and I don't want to lose that. So when it drops down to that 7, 6, 7, 8, and you're just kind of going through the motions because of whatever, we need to stop and change that because it's just too good. It's just like Emily makes award-winning chili. She's actually competed and won prizes for her chili. For her to phone it in and dump a can of chili in and serve it's just not right. You follow? And it's like some people know that in their marriage. They know that they were designed for something better. They know that what they had was better. They also know in the back of their head they're part of the problem, why it's a little bit off kilter, and they are looking for somebody to help them get back on, somebody that they can talk to. And so if you have anything going on in your marriage, you need to be proactive. And the website is designedtothrive.net. And then, of course, freshroadmedia.com, where Emily has her blogs, where we have our show, and where we're going to start doing more for marriages because it is the backbone that has split our society. Gary, any final thoughts you want to leave with the audience? And I mean, you've got blank canvas and plenty of time. What would you want people to know in this culture where it just feels like today is darker than yesterday, which was darker than the day before, and it just seems like just having a biblical worldview is almost to the point of being illegal now in the world, not just America, but in the world?
I'll make it quick and real easy. I tell people that come, we have several weekends just for pastors or full-time Christian workers. Mm-hmm. We have weekends for military couples. We have special weekends. But I tell them this one thing. If I were to ask them, do you really want to serve God and glorify God? They'd all say yes. And I would say to them, the greatest service, the greatest way to glorify God is to have a marriage that impacts the world. Mm-hmm. Pastors, you want to have a ministry? Great for you. But let me tell you something. If your marriage isn't right, your ministry is never going to be right. If Emily
says she can't handle it here anymore, I'm done. I'm done immediately. It doesn't matter how passionate, how committed I am. I'm taking her over any. God would never put me in a position where I'd have to choose between serving Him or my marriage. I don't believe that, and I believe that you always.
I agree.
There's this guy who came up to Adrian Rogers one time and he said, I left my wife for my secretary, but we're serving Jesus now, and we want you to pray for us because we want to be traveling evangelists. And Adrian Rogers says, I'm not going to pray for you, bro. I'm not going to waste my breath.
And I think he said bro, too.
Yeah. Bud, dude,
right,
guy. Look, guy, it ain't happening. I mean, can you just before we go, can you dive into what I'm talking about, why God wouldn't bless something like that, where if your marriage is really messed up, it might be affecting your ministry? Because a lot of ministry guys, look, I mean, if I didn't have you and I was struggling in my marriage as a pastor, who could I go to? Ask it.
Well, the sad thing about pastors is that most of us are pretty insecure guys when you get underneath it all. And we don't want people to know we're struggling. We don't want people because we think that they think we're on this pedestal, and we're not.
Mm-hmm.
And I've watched a lot of pastors have gone through that, and their marriages ended because they were too proud to ask for help. First of all, no matter who it is, especially me and my wife, if we need help, we need to identify it and look for it wherever we can get it. And there are resources out there all over for that. Get the pride thing out of the way. But I also think that if we understand how big a priority the marriage is, began in the Garden of Eden. It was important then. It ends in the book of Revelation when the Father says to the Son, "Go get your
bride."
Yeah.
The church. The church is the bride. Is that not a picture of wonder and marriage? Is that not a picture of glory and honor? Mm-hmm. Come on. We need to get that through to people.
I love that biblical perspective because I think you are so right on with that. And I like to tell people that when it comes to a married couple and you're both professing Christians, your marriage is your number one witness, because that covenant relationship that you have with each other, with Christ at the center, that's a mirror of the covenant relationship that God wants to have with every human being on the face of the earth. And so make that marriage your priority. I think it's so easy in this culture where our jobs are way too important for men and our kids are way too important for women. But if we could just realize that that marriage relationship, that covenant relationship is really the most precious gift that we have been given, I think we would maybe put a little more thought, a little more work, and a little more weight to keeping that relationship healthy. Am I way off there?
Preach it, sister.
Right on, way off is already happening. Yeah, that's right on.
All right. Well, thank you, Gary, for joining us. I love talking to you. We're going to have you back again. And I just really appreciate the work you do. And so Godspeed. Keep it up, brother.
You guys too. Miss you and look forward to seeing you soon, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to take a quick break, reset the cameras. We're coming back with Mike Shaw, right on, way off on No Apology with Emily and Chris on freshroadmedia.com.
Hey, if you enjoy listening to No Apology with Emily and Chris, if you get any encouragement from it, please consider standing with us financially. Go to freshroadmedia.com and consider giving a wonderful gift today. It is appreciated.
Welcome back to No Apology with Emily and Chris, brought to you by freshroadmedia.com. Don't forget, we are listener supported. What does that mean? That means listeners just like you send money in so that we can keep doing this at a high level. That's pretty cool. And I just like everybody to know, it's no big deal, but I get paid a grand total of $0. And always will. Because I'm the pastor of Fresh Encounter Church, and I love that. That's who I am. And yes, Fresh Encounter Church came alongside when this ministry started, calling it Fresh Road Media. And so I'm excited that Emily is the president and CEO of all this. And Emily, it's your show. Everybody, welcome back. Mike is sitting there on camera now, and you're listening. Emily, Mike are ready. Go.
All right, it's time for Right On, Way Off. I feel like a game show host. My favorite part of the show, and this is catching on. I'm actually loving it. I'm hearing people talk back to me using that term, right on, way off.
They are. It's really cool. In fact, do you want me to do like my big market voice guy, like to do an intro?
I would love that.
Like, we don't have to tell you who rocks the Twin Cities. It's Emily and Mike Shaw with Right On, Way Off. No.
Except instead of Twin Cities, it's got to be Iowa cornfields.
We don't have to tell you who rocks Shelby County.
Perfect. That was perfect.
This Sunday.
All right.
Monster trucks. No, okay, go ahead.
Time for Right On, Way Off.
By the way, my monster truck ad was my favorite ad of all time out of the thousands I voiced. That's my number one favorite. Okay, go ahead. Okay. I digress.
Are you done using your words?
I want to go watch monster trucks now.
I know. know you do. Heaven forbid we start talking about food.
Right on, way off, Emily.
Right on, way off. I've got 3 statements. We're going to go to Chris and Mike and determine whether these statements are indeed right on or way off. They're going to give me their opinions. And so first up, Chris, we'll go with you.
Ta-da.
Burning leaves
Smell
better than cut grass. Right on or way off?
I'm going way off.
Why?
Because I love the smell of fresh grass, especially like a late morning arrival at a ballpark.
Okay, we're talking about mowed grass, right? Okay.
Yes. I left that lifestyle years ago. 31, in fact. Okay. Anywho,
cut grass. Yes.
That smell of cut grass at the ballpark. There's just, to me, that's one of the most awesome smells on the planet. I won't tell you what the other awesome smell is, but that was one of my top 3 smells of my life, is that cut grass smell.
Interesting.
At even a Little League stadium, or Little League ballpark, when they just cut the grass and everybody's getting ready to play. It's just such a great smell.
Yeah. Did you not cut the grass at home? Because that's what I remember.
You don't get sometimes when you mow the lawn, you don't get that same smell when you're the one cutting it. I don't know why. I don't know.
Interesting. Maybe it's all weeds and not actually grass.
I love that. I love that fresh smell of cut grass. I'll take that over burning leaves.
Know.
So I'm either way off or whatever.
You're way off.
Right,
Mike Shaw, what do you think? Burning leaves smell better than cut grass. Right on or way off?
That's 1,000,000% right on.
Okay.
For a couple of good reasons.
You heretics.
First of all,
odor heretics.
First of all, fall.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Summer's too hot. It's too much sunshine. It's depressing. We want clouds. We want gray.
Oh.
We want rain turning to snow.
Yes.
And we want to burn those leaves. Growing up in Oregon, that was kind of the vibe.
Yeah, I bet it was in Oregon.
When fall hit, and you people are out pheasant hunting, and you've got piles of leaves that are burning, and it's light rain, and you just know that fall is here. Yeah. So I just love it. And then the other thing is I'm kind of allergic to grass, or was when I was younger.
Oh, yikes.
So when I had my own house back in the day, and I had to mow the lawn. Well, I had to mow the lawn as a responsible homeowner.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then my washer and dryer were in the garage. So I would, when I was done, I'd park the lawnmower, I'd lower the garage door, and then I would take off my clothes, throw them in the washer, and jump in the shower. Otherwise, my eyes would itch for all week.
Well, thank you for painting that picture.
You're welcome.
You have to be way off then, or right on.
Yeah.
Then I'm way off.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
I knew a kid growing up, he was allergic to grass, and it was a struggle. And so, you got to pump yourself full of whatever, antihistamines.
So it's total opinionated. Where do you fall, Emily?
Well, we fall with the fall. And yes, burning leaves do. That is a better smell than cut grass, and I'll tell you why. Because cut grass, while it is fantastic, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. You get just this, that smells wonderful, that's nice, it's kind of fresh and uplifting or whatever. Those burning leaves in the fall, that speaks into so many things. It speaks into great food, like a big old pot of chili or a roast in the oven. It speaks into a warm, crackling fire, just home and family and love and warmth. And all those those burning leaves evoke all of that. And so, yes, indeed.
It smells to me like vandalism, but that's another story.
Depends on where you grew up, I think. I don't know.
No.
You ever get busted behind the garage as a 10-year-old lighting leaves? I bet not.
Well, what can you say? Okay, so we all
Am I the only
agreed.
one that was playing with matches as a child and got severely punished?
No, you are not the only one. And that's another thing. How many kids do you have to catch playing with the lawnmower or cutting the grass? None, because it ain't that interesting.
Sounds like work. But I did burn a few leaves with a magnifying glass.
You can use that as well. There's lots of methods behind the madness.
A couple ants, maybe.
Once again, I agree with Mike. Okay.
Well, my new sermon is cut grass leads to righteousness, burning leaves, heresy. Vandalism and heresy.
And there's a gospel. There is a gospel message in those burning leaves as well.
Well, what is God talking to Moses through the burning leaves?
Well, I never thought
did
of that.
Moses rake the yard first when he got up on the side of the mountain?
And yet the leaves were not consumed.
But there's that, and the leaves were not consumed. But no, everything has to go through that death, dormancy thing, and then in the spring it brings new life. So I love that. You probably aren't going to have great cut grass without burning the leaves. You have to burn the leaves to get the great cut grass.
I'll mulch them.
So they're all dependent on each other?
They are. It's the circle of life. All right, statement number two. Number two is a quote. I'm not going to tell you who it's by right now, but I will tell you later. It says, "The good Lord didn't create anything without a purpose, but the fly comes close." Is that right on or way off? Mike Shaw, what do you think?
That is so right on. What the deal? So, Lubbock, Texas.
Yeah.
I can't remember what year it was. Ton of rain over a week period, some flooding. And following that, you know what happens. And you guys being in Minnesota, the mosquitoes, the state bird there. Yeah. The mosquitoes were so bad. And Southcrest Baptist Church on the South Loop 289, they had a sign that says, "Why didn't Noah just slap those two mosquitoes?" And I think you could say the same thing about flies.
Flies.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think? So that's right on.
Yeah.
All right. What do you think, Chris? Right on, way off?
I'm way off.
Okay.
And the reason being is that I hate bugs with a passion.
Yeah.
And we have found out, without going into any detail, we have found out that my heritage, my blood type, some of my behaviors, they're all like number one things that attract bugs. If you, like, for example, people that have O negative blood, which is me, we are much tastier to the bugs.
True.
It's been proven.
Yeah.
And so Emily and
Dark
I have been campfire people since we met. And so we'll be out by the campfire. I don't think a year of our marriage, over 38 years, we've not had multiple campfires in that year. We never, it's just part of our life. And we can be out at the campfire and Emily's not getting bit at all, and I can't stay there. And for years, we tried to figure out why. And I thought I was just this incredible wuss when it came to bugs. And it turns out I'm not. I was just being attacked a lot more than other people.
Okay.
And so I've had to do a deep dive research as to why these critters are so awful, and you realize that they are all part of the circle of life. They are food supply. They are food source for other bugs that we don't want. But that's another story for another day.
Yeah.
The point is I don't believe that God has created these things with no purpose in mind other than just to annoy the human being. And if that was his purpose, then we should look at it as such. And
you realize that beautiful story that you just told. You just lost Mike.
I just cut Mike out of the thing. Let
Okay.
me see if I can find him.
Because I want to see his reaction.
Did I fall? Did I disappear?
There. No,
that's bad. Okay.
Did you break it?
I think so.
I think Chris broke it. You want me to come over and fix it?
I don't know. Just everybody hold on. Let me see if I can't figure this out. Okay. All right, there, I got it. I got it. We're good.
Very good.
Where were we?
Now, I was explaining to you how that beautiful story that you just talked about with learning about the insects and doing it around a bonfire is all brought to you by burning leaves.
Right. Now, let me ask the theologian. Let me ask the theologian pastor.
Okay.
Is it possible that flies and mosquitoes and the like are part of the fall?
Oh.
Not the season fall, but the fall.
Like maybe they weren't so annoying before the fall.
Like before the fall, he didn't have them.
Or like Genesis 3, or like mosquitoes were pets.
Yeah.
Or something.
The children rode them.
Yes.
Put little saddles on them.
And the fly laid down with the spider.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't say that.
Yes.
It is.
Again,
I think that's possible.
Can I answer this honestly?
Sure.
I mean, like just stone cold, let's cut through the crap?
Yeah.
I don't care.
Okay.
If God, here's one of the problems that we have with scholarly Christianity in 2023.
Okay.
And that is that a lot of people are coming off of what we just talking about now. Let's get into the significance. Let's find out is Genesis 3 this? Is this where is the mosquitoes part of the fall? Blah, blah. And you get into all this minutia that you will not find an actual answer to. You will come up with an opinion that you think might be an answer, but you will not find an answer. Mm-hmm. Number two, God's ways are so much higher than our ways for us to even attempt to figure them out. we're wasting people's time, including our own. And number 3, what difference does it make if somehow you could find out that mosquitoes are part of the fall? So kill those sinful little things. I mean, you get what I'm saying? I mean, there's no end game that actually advances my walk in Christianity, so I don't care.
Okay, I'll ask him.
And I will try
it's
to.
And
if we try to figure out our curiosity beyond just conversation and fun and getting into let's scholarly figure this out, I think that's where a lot of errors are made.
I like that.
And the one I point back to is this blowhard from Calvin College. Went and he just was bound and determined he was the most significant scholar in the world. So he published that he has figured out that there most likely was never a Garden of Eden.
Right.
And that Adam and Eve were really just figments of Moses' imagination.
They were archetypes.
They were archetypes.
Yeah.
And it's like...
Emergent church?
It's not even emergent church. It's like, flush that
but
church.
progressivism,
Right.
And this goes back to where is your significance? Look, it also ties in with those of you who want to have this prophetess and prophet experience, and you want the special revelation from God. God gave you special revelation. It's in 66 books from Genesis 1 to Revelation 22. Mm-hmm. Learn that. Yeah. And I've been studying it hardcore for over 30 years, and I feel like I've just scratched the surface.
Oh, yeah.
I get up in the pulpit on Sunday, and I'm like, I hope this makes sense, because, So, am I right on or way off? I don't even know where we were.
All that from a fly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Flies are not the devil.
So I don't even know. Chris, you said you were way off.
I don't even know.
And Mike, you said you were right on.
I'm trying not to touch something to make Mike Shaw black out again.
Keep your hands to yourself.
Just quit messing with the mouse.
I
It'll be fun.
know. Just sit and drink my green juice.
Yeah.
Which I used to do this in private, and now there's a camera.
What I think is really interesting, though, is that neither one of you have asked yet who that quote came
Sir
from.
Isaac Newton?
That's a good guess.
Let me modern day being 1850 or earlier.
Yes.
Post Spurgeon or pre Spurgeon. That's always.
Yes. I mean,
which one?
Post, I would say. Yeah.
Someone who didn't like
post.
flies.
Post Spurgeon.
Post.
So,
yes.
Someone who didn't.
I'm going to just take a
flies.
shot in the dark and say A.W. Tozer. Why not?
Oh, that's so close. It's Mark Twain.
Mark
Twain, the good Lord didn't create anything without
Have
a
you
purpose,
even
but the
read
fly
the two
comes.
authors? Mark Twain and A.W. Tozer. They wouldn't collaborate.
The fly comes close. And I think if you really listen to the quote, Mark Twain is right with you. It comes close.
Okay.
Right.
It comes close.
Well, Mark Twain was the most incredible writer of that.
He was
era.
a great American writer,
great.
wasn't he?
He was fantastic.
And, he spent some time in Missouri. This year was awful for flies in Iowa, man. We couldn't even sit outside. It was so awful. So maybe he experienced that same thing over in Missouri when he was growing up. I don't know. Who knows?
idea.
Flies have been around for a long time.
All right. How many more
Apparently
questions
they
do we have?
42. No, I'm just kidding. Just one more.
One
Are you guys
more.
ready?
I'm ready.
The Bible tells us to love our neighbors and also to love our enemies, probably because they are generally the same people. Right on or way off? Mike, I'm going to go with you first. Is that right on or way?
Oh, my gosh. All right, that's a tough one. For some people, it's probably right on. But I'm going to go with way off on that.
Yeah.
I think I've generally gotten along with my neighbors, so I've had a problem with that.
Yeah.
I tell you what, my experience in Iowa, I just love this place, and I just love everyone at the church, and I love all my new friends, and my heart is full, so...
I love you.
Right, yes.
You love me.
I know. If I could dress up as a purple dinosaur, I think I would do that.
Part of God's family.
With the tic tac,
Paddywhack.
give a dog a bone. They stole that song.
With the TikTok?
Yes.
They had TikTok back then?
They stole that song.
TikTok. Tic-tac, paddywhack.
And then as far as loving your enemies, I'm not so sure it's love your enemies. It's more like pray for your enemies. Pray for those who spitefully use you.
Yeah. That's the best way to love them.
Serve them, because by doing so, you're dumping hot coals on their head. David prayed that God would bash their teeth in. So
that's true.
I pray that my enemies find God and are saved from hell.
Yeah.
So I do go that far because I don't want anyone to go to hell. So anyway, I'm just way off on that whole thing.
Okay, yeah. Maybe a little too simplistic.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chris?
I believe I'm right on, but again, I have to hear the question one more time.
Okay, the Bible tells us to love our neighbors and also to love our enemies, probably because they are generally the same people.
I'm way off.
Okay. Why are you way off?
Because I think the Bible's very specific that even though some of your enemies could be your neighbors, when it says love your neighbor as yourself, it's talking about your world, talking about your inner circle, talking about where you are.
Yeah.
And that love must be righteous. And it comes from God. I mean, most of us, we're not like Emily. We're not naturally loving people. And so we have to conjure it up. Well, you can't conjure up this love for your neighbor without the Spirit. And then when it talks about loving your enemies, it's very specific. These are your enemies. They're not the same people. So that's what I take issue with. I'm not saying a neighbor can't be an enemy, but when it's talking about loving your enemy, the gist of it is, and this really kind of makes Christianity hard to swallow some days, is that because of Christ's righteousness on my life, because of the mountain that I have been forgiven, I need to, in the Spirit of God dwelling in me, hold no record of wrong when someone wrongs me.
True. There you go.
And because the love of Christ is in me, when I see my enemy just acting a fool, my heart breaks for them. And I try to not hold record of wrong. And I got a caveat on the other side coming up, so don't let me lose you. So I try to hold no record of wrong. So when things are going bad with this person, I want to pray for them. I want to do things, but it just doesn't sting, especially if I first one of the Corinthians, chapter 4, the veil's in front of them. Chapter 3 and 4 really go through it. They're veiled. They don't know.
They don't know.
It's just like my dog does something stupid. It's like, he didn't know. And if he did know, then there's something else. Now, the flip side of that is people will take the truth that I just shared, and then when people want justice from an enemy that hurt them, they'll beat them down, saying, you leave the justice to the Lord. Not always the case.
True.
Sometimes God puts justice in our hands for our future, whether that be to know that He's there. Other times we got to leave justice to God. It's in the interaction with your neighbor and your enemies that you sort this out.
Right,
So to say my neighbors are generally going to be my enemies, that is not what the Bible teaches.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a quote. I'm going to say that...
Sorry to end on such a bummer train.
Should have ended with the burning leaves. That would have been a little better, more upbeat. Well,
you parsed it well.
Let me save this whole show. Okay?
I'm
joking. I'm right.
Let me get you on full camera because you're important.
Thank you very much.
The peanut gallery, the leader.
All right. So I'm right on. I am right on with this. This is actually a quote from G.K. Chesterton. And the reason that I'm right on with this, even though what I'm about to say does not invalidate what you guys were saying, because I think there's absolute truth in what you guys are saying. But I think what he's talking about here is, in the Bible where it talks about you can't put your trust in any man. Trust in no frame, whether it's a government or a personal relationship. Chris, you and I have counseled a lot of people who the best friend in the world is all of a sudden not their friend, and that's a hard pill to swallow. Or a marriage that splits. You know what I mean? They love you till they don't love you anymore. Mm-hmm. And
that's a line we use all the time.
People are fickle. Mm-hmm. They really, really, really are. And so I think that there is an element of truth in that humanity just has that natural bent to, veer off into sin. And so when we do veer off into sin, it's like you said, Chris, they're veiled. And to maintain that, who loves you today may not love you tomorrow, or who hates you today may love you tomorrow. That's a real thing.
And that goes back to marriage, where when you make a marriage commitment, you're not doing it out of, as long as she behaves and acts like I want her. And as long as he does what I want him to do. Yeah. See, a real marriage comes into play when if all I worry about is how I can serve Emily, and all Emily worries about is how she can serve me, we have a great relationship. And in my service of her, when I see her serving me back, it feels good. It feels like we're on the same page. In fact, yesterday I was sitting on the deck, and we have water bottles that we refill out of the fridge. We have a little hydration packet that we put in there to try to help us not be fat and pathetic. And I had no reason other than the fact that I'd been serving Emily a lot the last few days. I just said, would you go do this for me? And she looked at me and she kind of half smiled like she knew she was being played, but she knew she had to do it. Yeah. So she did. And you get what I'm saying? It's like, what a wonderful thing. But if we go into this marriage or any relationship, just what can I get out of it? What's in it for me? It won't last.
Yeah.
Which is why the consumer Christian mentality at a church is horrible. If you come into a church and you're just visiting, you're trying to absorb, you're trying to eat spiritual food, well, God bless you. None of this applies to you. But if you've been in that church for a while and it's your church home, and now you're going to look at everything through a consumer mentality, what does this do for me? What are my thoughts?
Right.
Am I being fed?
Yeah.
Then it all falls apart. And like as a pastor or a guest speaker or a radio host, they love you till they don't love you anymore.
Yeah.
And that's why anybody outside your inner circle, I have two inner circles. I have the outer inner circle and the inner circle. The outer inner circle people don't get to the inner circle. And then everybody else is everybody else. And that's just the way I have to function in my life.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is.
And it takes a tremendous amount of discerning because, Chris, you and I have seen marriages that have split. They have treated each other horribly. And yet God is still in the business of reconciliation. Yeah. And he literally brings that back together. He heals it. And then those people go forward actually in a stronger marriage than like what Gary was talking about, where we never cheated on each other. We never did those things, but we're just kind of going through the motion. And yet this reconciled marriage has a depth and a passion that really inspires others. So I think the quote here is, don't put your trust in any man person, and likewise don't burn your bridges, but God will, or your leaves. If your bridges are made of leaves, don't burn them.
Burn your leaves. I don't care. I'm joking.
But God, when God directs us and tells us this is what you need to do here and this is what we need to do there, we have to have the discerning to know the difference.
Discernment.
So, very good. G.K. Chesterton. I like that quote. I'm going to keep that one in the holster.
That was a good right on way off, even though we had camera problems in the middle of it. And for you audio-only listeners, tell your friends, because that's where the show's the best, in my opinion.
Good banter. That was good banter, fellas.
I don't know. Yeah. All right, Mike Shaw, before we take off, what's coming up on your new show? How's it been going? The name of the show is Jesus is Coming Soon with Mike Shaw. Another broadcast that is on freshroadmedia.com alongside this show, No Apology with Emily and Chris, and the teaching of my pastoral ministry called Bible Idiots. But Mike, what's going on with your show?
Well, so just some interviews I'm thinking about. Jay Johnson, Andrew Gomison, and Garry Koon I just met.
Yes.
So we're going to have him on my show. He's
can't find your own guests, huh?
That's why I'm here.
This is how it works, right?
We'll share.
I'm just
make new friends, but keep the old.
Here's
One
the
is
thing.
Silver and the other's gold.
What episode number are we up to? 21, 22, something like that? 20-something?
22, I think.
Every guest we've had is basically a friend of mine, and I call them and say, "Hey, would you want to help Emily out with her new show?"
Yeah.
We have not reached out to the masses yet, and the one who when he was on the Robertson show said he didn't remember being on Bible Idiots. Well, he does now because I'm trying to get Frank Turk to come on the show.
Good.
And
they're busy people.
His right hand gal basically said maybe later fall. In other words, they're saying
in the fall,
once you get a better audience,
burn your leaves, dude, and call me back.
Exactly.
When
it's leaf burning season,
you need a few more 100 listeners before he's going to come on. But anyway,
well, we're doing well, and you're right, Chris. I have no friends, so I'm stealing. So I'm calling yours. It's making my show better.
Well, I'm wondering where all your people are, because
though.
you got people all over the country, because you had a talk show in Tucson for 4 years. You've been all over the country, weatherman in Roswell, New Mexico, Lubbock, Texas. I mean, so it's not like you're bereft of opportunity.
Right.
It's just you're in Iowa, and it's just so easy just to tack on to some of these good people.
Well, and he's got other interviews as well.
First of all,
I like Dr. Ben, or not, Pastor Ben.
Pastor Ben was great.
Yeah.
And we talked, and that's
and we've known him since he, before he became a pastor. I mean,
a lot of these are mutual friends, right?
So but you know Ben a lot more than we do. We met him twice, and his name was on emails because he was in the same work group when we were at the same broadcast company.
And you and I both worked with Jay Johnson. The three of us worked with Jay Johnson in Tucson, but then you guys served with him in Kansas, so you know him a lot better now.
Yeah, Jay's inner circle.
But Jay was a great friend when in Tucson. So
he's such a good friend to me that the 2 years I spent in Abilene, Kansas, there's no fewer than 5 times he sat me down and looked at me with that angry Jay Johnson face and gave me some really hard news. And he was
Knock
right.
It off,
yeah, I had to apologize in one situation. Another one, I had to literally change my approach to ministry overall.
I've never seen that face of Jay's.
Let me tell you,
angry Jay face.
When you see it, you'll know it. And it's not angry. It's not angry.
It's serious.
It's just
let's have a heart-to-heart.
If you don't change,
here.
I will be majorly disappointed in you. And it's like, Jay, I don't want you disappointed in me.
I don't want Jay disappointed.
No, it's just, sometimes when friends tell you the truth, and even if it hurts, it's some of the best things that can ever happen.
That is love.
I'll give you one example.
All right.
We were talking about, because me and Jay and a couple other pastors would hang out on a weekly basis. Well, weekly turns into like 4 out of 6 weeks. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
So it wasn't every single week, but most weeks. And one time we were talking about our churches, and I said, my church. And I'm a big proponent of what Jay says. And so for me to actually make that mistake was kind of shocking. And Jay literally came, not unglued, but, just very, very up, like,
I'm serious.
Getting up on the wheel. He's like, whose church? Is it really your church?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's Jesus' church, Jay. I'm so sorry. It's Jesus' church. So you won't hear me. If you hear me say my church, chances are I'm correcting myself in my head.
Yeah.
And so they made a pulpit for me, and I brought it to. It was a gift to me, so it's mine. So I brought it here. We don't use it. It's in our youth room because they have a pulpit that's very special to a lot of people here. So we're using that one.
Right.
But on it, I had it written right there where no one can see it but me. It says, "It's not about you." And I learned that again from preaching at White Ferry Road Church because Al Robertson's pulpit had that. And Phil, I wanted it there.
Nice.
You see it and you immediately know what it says before you even read it. But the point is once you get that in your head, it frees you up. Where if, you make mistakes or you're bumbling around, it's not the end of the world. Because if you are perfect, if you're the perfect orator and you don't have the power of God in the message, who cares? It ain't going to go nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have disunity, like on a church board or in your marriage or whatever, the power of what you do gets sucked away.
Yeah.
And you can smell it, you can feel it, you can see it. However you want to put that spiritual vibe, that hum, it's there when it's there, and it's gone when it's gone.
Yeah, the Holy Spirit really does bring that unity. It's a work of God. It's not a work of men's hearts.
That's right.
But the Holy Spirit does bring unity. So when there isn't unity, something ain't right. And you really need to acknowledge that, number one. And number two, find where that hiccup is. Because otherwise, like you said, Chris, the Holy Spirit withdraws and we're just going through the motions then, and we're doing religious activity. So unity of the body, so
go back
important.
to the start of the show. Unity.
Important.
All right. Well, I was glad to donate my time to this broadcast again.
We are too.
Yeah.
You stumbled over that sentence pretty hard. Are you sure? Are you really sure?
What percentage of 0 would you like, my dear? Just name your price.
Oh, just give me everything you got. That'll be enough.
This was another bumbling, stumbling. Probably people are going to like it and call it a success. I just am like, I don't even know how this is even broadcastable. But here we are.
It's fun. It's great. And iron sharpens iron. That's what it's all about, bringing light to the world authentically. You cannot deny this is not authentic. And honestly. So,
yeah. Thanks, Mike, for being with us. We appreciate it. Don't forget, go to freshroadmedia.com. Give your best gift right now. Help keep this broadcast growing. It's going to be syndicated. It's going to go into a lot of places. Right now, it's just an upstart podcast in a really cool studio in a really cool town in Iowa. And we are glad that you are along with us. Emily, your final thoughts today as we say goodbye.
Love your enemies and love your neighbors. That is the great command because Christ first loved you.
That's right.
That's my final thought.
You're not going to take us out? You want me to do it?
Oh, sure. You're listening to No Apology. You're listening.
Let's just stop for a second. At what point do you take over the show? Okay. I've been waiting. 20 episodes. I'm waiting. Take it, girl. Take it.
You're listening to No Apology with Emily and Chris. Don't forget to join us next week and check out all the resources we have available for you at freshroadmedia.com.
Ba-dum-bump.